right, let's begin with our first big story. Before now, Nigeria was known for her excellence in football and athletics. And during those years of glory, sportsmen and women performed extraordinarily well in just those two sports before others started gaining prominence.
Absolutely, Mike. You remember there and then games like boxing, shot put, taekwondo, and a few others brought Nigeria and Nigerians to limelight after they won medals at various world level competitions and championships.
I can really remember. And today, analysts have continued to talk about the downward trend of the sports sector of Nigeria's economy, and they blame it on all funding, or blame it all on funding, I must say. But let me take you to my wall so we can have a clear breakdown of what some of these challenges are before we start the discussion proper with our analyst here, Chuka Izuebunam. Chuka, good morning.
Good morning. Good to be on the show.
It's really good to see you. All right, lad, let's get to my wall, and we have a better perspective to this. I have some pictures to show you, and well, these were days of glory, I must say. All right, let's get into the show now proper. Right, let's go. You see, first, it is bad enough to say that no Nigerian footballer has made the shortlist for the CAF Prize Award in the last 5 years or more. But remember, the male and female football teams once dominated the African sporting landscape, but they have lost their aura and have been relegated to the background. Also remember that Nigeria did not pick up any medal at the just concluded Olympics in Rio. So let's look at what analysts say and what they are saying. Remember, we came third so far in that tournament. Let's move on. You see, usually they blame it on revenue or finance, as the case may be, and that's because the federal government solely controls the financing of sports in Nigeria, even though the administration of sports is perceived to be handled by independent bodies. But then, he who pays the piper dictates the tune. Let's move on. That's what they say. All right, now, the recent drop in the price of crude oil and recent economic challenges in Nigeria is also taking its toll on the sports sector, and that perhaps is another factor responsible for the poor financing. We heard the minister earlier on in one of the excerpts we played talking about that, but we'll have to play you that full so you can get to hear exactly what he said. Now, the sports ministry is headed by the sports minister, and so he alone controls all the finance that goes to all these sports federations. Now, this man is usually a politician who in most cases has little or no knowledge or background in sports. That's how it's done in Nigeria, because the point there is it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who has years of pedigree in sports, but someone who can administer the ministry. So he single-handedly controls what goes to these federations we have in here, and the sports minister have a lot of people, from reports we've heard, from reports we've played and so on. He has goofed in so many ways that Nigerians have complaints and complaints and complaints about putting a square peg in a round hole, if I have to put it that way.
The disabled athletes.
Exactly. He made lots of so many comments that people in sports are not very comfortable with. But let's move on to talking about this better. Then the much talked about corruption. Many exchange hands, money exchange hands, usually through national sports festivals, and they are not always accounted for. On the side is the failure to hold inter-school sports competition, inter-house sports competitions, and grassroots sports competitions, as the case may be. We have all of this, which is supposed to be a build-up to raising athletes and footballers and sportsmen and women to the highest level and to the highest glory in sports. Now, from corruption, we also talk about unpaid salaries of sportsmen, talking about their coaches too, from Amadou Shaibu to Stephen Keshi to Samson Siasia, and even to all of them, as the case may be. But they usually are underpaid, and this largely affects their morale in many of the times, and government would rather employ the services of foreign coaches and pay them 10 times higher than the local ones. And certainly it's one thing that Nigerians have complained about. Now, Sonny Olise, exactly. I was trying to get the name. And now let's move on. You see, the most recent of the cases of maladministration and ill treatment of sportsmen in Nigeria is the case of the Falcons, who recently won the African Women Championship for the 8th time. And they have since staged a protest. And so we asked if this sit-in protest would indeed yield any result. And when will the sports ministry listen to their demands? And the last question, what is the way forward for funding sports in Nigeria? But then TVC News posed these questions to the sports minister, Solomon Dalong, and this is what he had to say. But let us play that for you after we go on a break, and we come back and we'll let you know what's on with that. Stay with us.
Around the clock to ensure that what belongs to them legitimately goes to them. And this has to do with government process. And one thing I will always make clear is, you see, the process of request for funds for sporting projects must come much, much earlier in time if it must also meet the objectives. And don't forget that nobody indeed knew the team was even going to emerge victorious.
All right. You just heard the Minister of Sports there now. I know Chuka has something to say about that. Chuka, welcome to the show proper. First of all, what do you make of that statement from the Minister before we go ahead?
One word quite describes that: shameful. It's embarrassing. First of all, I would think that the sports minister will apologize to all Nigerians, all sports lovers all across the globe. Then after that, tender his resignation, because there's one goof too many. He's goofed so many times and we've lost counts. He just keeps embarrassing us each time he opens his mouth to say something. I think he should just apologize to us and resign.
Because the point there is, why go for a competition if you're not going there to win? You know, that's you don't even have to be a professional.
The shocking thing is
to know that.
Yeah, the shocking thing is, this is a team that has won this competition for 7 times, and you say you weren't expecting them to win it at 8 times, when by all indices they were the clear favorites. And for me, I don't want to dwell on what the minister said. I think we should just look forward.
Perhaps we'll come back to the issue of the Falcons. Let's look at general funding, underfunding generally when it comes to sports in Nigeria. What do you think is responsible for that?
First of all, Nigeria is a country that for many years will fail to heed the signs out there, the signs, the storm that has been raging. And now when it starts raining, we all start making noise. The big problem with funding in Nigeria is the fact that everything comes from the government. And when the government says there's no money, or when the government wants to hold a leverage over an agency or an association, then you have problems like this. For instance, if the sports minister is not happy with the Minister of Sports, he can withhold funds, and we all know what will happen. And things like this have played out in the past, where there's a war between the Football Federation chairman and the sports minister, or the federal government, and at the end of the day, our sports suffers.
So it is it's totally a function of how the feeling of the minister is, or how the feeling or body language of the government
exactly.
is.
If you look through, let me use football for instance. Most of the football clubs in Nigeria are owned by state governments. Then when you have a governor who is passionate about football, that club thrives because he puts money, he supports them any way he can. But the minute he leaves power and another person comes in who's not interested in sports, you just see a downward trend of that club. And that's what's been happening in our sports. Every time you see you have a leader who's interested in sports, and for that period our sports is thriving, there's so much interest, and when he's out of office, everybody...
All right, so the review going on right now at the National Assembly, you know that's the Sports Commission Act and the NFF Act is before the National Assembly for a review. What do you think should be tweaked apart from this autonomy that you're talking about?
First of all, for me, I think we've had this talk so many times. It's not about passing a bill, it's the will to actually make that bill work. And that's something that's been lacking in Nigeria, not just Nigerian sports all around, but it's been lacking. And we pass a bill, we all sing hallelujah, and when it comes to implementing it, nothing happens. And for me, let's just wait and see what happens after they pass that bill. But to your question, I think for autonomy, all sports associations should be autonomous. We focus too much on football because football seems to be the one that brings in the most money, either for players, for the association. It brings in the most money. That's why we'll focus on it. And in that way, sports like basketball that has quite a following, table tennis that used to be a mainstay in Nigeria begins to suffer. You see athletics, nobody's paying attention to athletics. Then again, I would like them to, in that bill, create an environment that will allow private investors to invest in sports. First of all, one thing I've noticed about our sports administration in Nigeria is that there's no air of transparency. It's not open, so people who actually want to put money into sports are wary of putting their money into sports because they don't even know how it's going to be spent. Now, if you look at some of these sponsors, one of the issues they have is, okay, I'm ready to sponsor this competition, I'm ready to sponsor this sport. The organization wants to collect the money and spend it without the sponsor knowing how you spend that money. And because of that, if the sponsor once, twice, after a couple of sponsorship, they tend to pull out because they can't actually tell you where their money went to or how it was spent.
Apart from advertisement.
We know that we have lots of Nigerian sports administrators who are even consultants to agencies across the world. So when it comes to understanding the business of sports, we believe, or we want to believe, that they know these things. But how has it not been implemented back home where Nigerian sportsmen see sports as a business where they can really play it out as business?
First of all, we have square pegs in round holes. An example is our minister. He's a politician. He barely knows anything about sports. And now when somebody who knows the business of sport comes in and starts telling you, this is the way it should be done, this is how we should do it, this is how we ought to be running our sports, they feel threatened because they want it business as usual. And that's why most people don't succeed when they come to work in Nigeria. They find it difficult to succeed because the environment is just not fertile enough. We have seasoned administrators, we have top coaches. I always use football as a case example. Look at Sunday Olise. He came in with the ideas. We insulted him for all he did. We said a lot of things. Yes, as a person, Olise might not be the best of persons, but as a coach, he had a good record before he left. And why did he leave? Because of administrative issues.
Yeah, but we had some people who said Olise also had his own issues as well.
That's Olise as a person, not Olise as a coach.
Yeah, but the person and the coach, they all match together because the position of a coach is leadership, and the leadership has to do with the person.
If me as a person, if what I do outside the job does not affect my job, then you should leave me outside the job and focus on me on the job.
All of this, there's an infusion into it, because when you're taking a leadership role or a leadership position, there are people who are just going to follow you for what you do and how you do it, and even not for what you say.
Yeah, but was Olise getting results? Did he lose matches? You can't fault him for his result. But that's not even my issue. My issue is you bring in a foreign coach and the whole scenario changes. You set a whole new template for the coach, for the foreigner, and you try to make it as easy as possible for him to succeed simply because he's a foreigner. And I think it's an inferiority complex that is worrying our administrators. And that is because they are not sports administrators. They are just politicians or rich people who happen to be looking for a place to make themselves relevant, to be seen, and they say, okay, sports is a place, and they.
But it's not even if you're not well knowledgeable in that particular aspect you've been appointed to govern and manage. Is it too much to co-opt those who know how to do it? I understand that when Dalong came in, he set up a committee to look into a lot of issues. What we've not heard is what the committee came up with, the recommendations of the committee, sports reform, if Dalong is taking anything out of their input.
There are so many white papers, so many reports in this country, and like I said before, nothing always comes out of it. It's the implementation that is always an issue. It's easy for anybody to bring in all the best brains in the world and surround yourself with them, get ideas. It's another thing entirely to actually listen to them.
All right, now the, excuse me, when we talk about the autonomy of sports federation, government should hands off, because I remember we're going there earlier, government should hands off. In fact, it is common knowledge that government should not have any business in sports. They should be left alone. If government really leaves these federations alone, do they have the capacity to stand on their own?
First of all, I would say I'm not in support of a total hands-off of the government. Okay. Nigeria is not as developed as the United States. In fact, the United States is about the only country in the world that doesn't even have a sports department. They don't have a Ministry of Sports. Yeah, but we have other European countries who do. So Nigeria is not matured economically to that level for us to say government should totally hands off. I think government should have a partial hands off from sports. And secondly, what that will entail is that the strong will survive, the weak will die.
Yeah, but when you say partial handing off or hands off of sports, in what ways is that going to play out? And what will now, in that case, what would now be interpreted as interference and or not?
At what point?
At what point exactly?
Policies. You shouldn't interfere in the policy making of the association, appointing of officers and all that, because what normally happens is this: I fund football, and because I'm giving you money for football, I tend to want to tell you that, okay, Mr. A should be secretary, Mr. B should be treasurer, and that's what happens. And when it doesn't happen like that, there's friction, and the person bringing the money tends to want to withdraw his money or limit what he gives to the association, and putting them in jeopardy. On the flip side,
okay,
also
we'll come back to this point you're making. Let's go on a break now, and then we come back. But don't forget that we're also going out on TVC Entertainment. Viewers there can continue with TVC Breakfast on TVC Nigeria, also on Concert Channel 190 and DSTV Channel 418.
You can go to Go TV, and the channel you're looking for is 45, SCTV it is 510.
All right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and this segment we are discussing sports in Nigeria, sports administration in Nigeria. A lot of Nigerians have lots of dissatisfaction in recent years when it comes to performance, whether it's sports, athletics, football, whatever it is. Nigerians have not been very, very happy with the way their sportsmen have not performed on the international scale or international stage.
Some have blamed that it has to do with a lack of funds, and that they are not well appreciated and well remunerated, so that perhaps telling on their performance. So.
Exactly, that's one point given, and others have different different explanations for all of that. And then we have Chuka Izuebuna with us in the studio. We've been discussing this. He is a sports journalist. Now, Chuka, before we went on break, we were talking about the autonomy of sports administration generally, and you were making a point.
Yeah, I was going to say that on the flip side, most of these associations would not want government to withdraw in any form, partially or fully, because the question we should be asking them, what are they doing to generate funds for themselves? I've not heard anything different from the past administrations. All I hear is there's no money, but nothing is being done. And that's because when government doesn't bring money, there's stagnancy in the associations. There are different ways we can raise money. Most of them, they just think of either government or find somebody to sponsor. How about, have they tried things like fundraising, sales, and stuff like that? I go into the market and I don't even see a Super Eagles jersey. When I see it, I don't see any link between the selling and the Nigerian Football Federation. How does the money get back to them? We need to think outside the box. Yeah, we know that we're in dire times, funds are difficult to come by, but that's the more reason why we should think outside the box.
In this case, are you saying the federations are not as creative as they're supposed to?
They've not been as creative.
In terms of revenue generation.
They haven't been creative at all. And at this point, I have to give a big kudos to the Lagos State team, the Tinubu and his crew. They are doing well. You go around, you hear so many competitions happening in Lagos. There's always a buzz happening. And you go outside Lagos, it's silent. On the federal level, it's quiet. And we just wait. And it's saddening and very, very painful when the NFL president comes out and says there's no money and
But do you think Nigerians will be willing to buy a Super Eagles jersey, for instance?
Nigerians
I'm not a fan, but there was a particular game.
You need to be a fan.
There was a particular game I watched some years back, and a foreign team came to Nigeria, and you expect Nigerians fans to be loyal to Nigerians. But after a while, those foreign teams were performing better than the Nigerian team, and the fans just shifted their loyalty to the foreign teams and were booing the Nigerian team and praising the foreign team.
But it happens
and
sometimes
how fickle the loyalty of Nigeria when it comes to sports. So if you see the jersey of those teammates who perform so woefully, would you want to buy the jersey?
First of all, I don't think Nigerian fans respect to Nigerian teams fickle. When they boo Nigerian teams, it's not because they don't like them or it's reverse psychology. They want them to play better. So they feel if you do better, you'll win back our praise. So that's why they boo them. And the other team gets sucked into that praise and they make mistakes. They play to the gallery. But that aside, everybody loves a winning team. Before the Nigerian League, the Nigerian Professional Football League, nobody was paying attention to it until recently this crop of administrators came in and changed things. Now, people are talking about the Nigerian Professional Football League. People are actually asking for jerseys of these clubs. They want to buy them. They want to have them. So if the Super Eagles are doing well, like they are doing well now, people want to buy their jerseys. Not just in Nigeria, but outside Nigeria. The thing is, we're not packaging our sports well. We're not packaging, there's no transparency. So people see, people look at our administrators and they say, they just want to eat.
All right. Well, we don't have all the time right now, but we can't leave without talking about the Falconets right now that are protesting their non-payment of their allowances and bonuses and so on. Now, how embarrassing or how, on the other hand, how interesting or how embarrassing do you think this is?
I don't think for administrators it's embarrassing. Because if you look back in history, it's happened several times. Remember when the Super Eagles were stranded in South Africa? They refused to leave their hotel, they refused to go to the airport.
In
to
USA?
Travel. Yes, they refused to travel. The Olympic team were stranded in the US too. Why? Funding. So I don't think we're embarrassed. For me, I've always said it on different fora, and I keep saying it. We don't have to have a plethora of teams. You have the under-13, you have the under-17, under-20, Olympic team, the Super Eagles, then you duplicate the same thing for the ladies and come and start crying for funding. If you can't fund all these teams, take the ones that are key to you and fund them. We don't have to go for all the competitions, to be honest. And truth be said, we don't win all the time. We just want to be there. If you feel that funding is an issue for you, take the Super Eagles, take the under-20 team. The under-20 team can also function as the Olympic team. It's easier to fund but we just want to be there because we want all those teams to play.
The giant of Africa.
It doesn't matter. These are their times. You cut your coat according to what you
No,
have.
but apart from that, do you think there's something wrong with the way the ministry or the government communicates with these people? Because the point there is, if you don't have funds, there's a way you can still explain to these girls and say, or the boys, whoever, we don't have money, this is how much we have, in case you're going for this and going for that. As can there be some
way
level of...
what we all watch what the minister said. What he said typifies the what he thinks. They didn't plan for the girls, so if you're not planning for them, you're not communicating. Because if you had planned, you would have seen that there's no money, and you would have told the girls that, see, this is the situation, but rest assured, we're going to take care of you. But the girls came out feeling that there was no plan for them, and once they leave this hotel, that's the end.
That's the end.
Because it's happened on different occasions. And even before they went for this tournament, we heard what happened to the Falconets and the Flamingos. They were given 10,000 naira to go home. And these girls knew, if we leave here, they know that once they leave, they'll probably not get anything again. So they want to sit in and get what they can get.
And these are ladies, for instance. These are ladies, for God's sake.
They don't make as much money
Men
as the
may
guys.
be more compromising.
What is the lady and the man thing in here?
No, I want my money.
The ladies and money. Ladies
yeah.
and money. Okay. All right. Now, Chuka, thank you very much for coming on
Thank
the
you.
program.
It's
this morning.
always a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Right. All right. Stay tuned. Now we'll be discussing another topic after now. We'll go on a break now and we'll return on TVC Breakfast. Stay with us.